Today I'm here with my guest, Gabe Bult. I said it right?
You did, yeah.
Okay, perfect. We had a little pre-discussion on how to pronounce your last name. I was really scared of butchering it.
No, it was all good. Yeah, I go by Dave when I order coffee, so like it always gets messed up by
You go
people.
by Dave?
Nobody understands my name. Like I say Gabe, they'll hear Dave, and then I'll say Bolt, and they'll spell it like crazy ways. So it's all good.
Yeah, but it's actually Gabriel. I didn't know that. I feel like that's common sense, but I didn't know that, and I've been following you on YouTube for a while.
Yeah, I don't usually go Gabriel much, just because like for some reason people don't get that one either. So I keep it short, and then that's kind of what I named my channel. So I just stick with that now.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, my name's Andrea, and I feel like it's not that complicated, and still a lot of people call me Adriana all the time. I don't know what that's about, but it's a name thing. It gets complicated. But thank you for coming on. I'm super excited to be interviewing you today. So tell us a little bit more about what you do instead of me trying to do it and butchering it.
Sure. So yeah, I do YouTube right now. It's kind of like my full-time thing. I also was able to get into doing YouTube full-time by doing some real estate investing. And I was a real estate agent before, but that's kind of what I do now. I talk a lot about minimalism and saving money and finances, that type of thing. So yeah, it's pretty fun.
Yeah, so I was just telling you before this, and people that follow the podcast will know, but we interviewed Christina. I don't know why I say we, but I interviewed Christina the previous episode, and she's also on YouTube and a minimalist. And it's interesting because I feel like minimalism is very different things to people. Like the concept is more or less the same, but people go at it differently. So I'm kind of really curious as to like why you wanted to go on a journey where you wanted to be a minimalist. Like what took you there?
Yeah, so like, I know it's really weird. It's different for everybody. I don't love the name minimalist. It does well on YouTube, so that's why I use it a lot. But for me, it's just the idea of like, it's also like essentialism, which is Greg McKeown did a book on that. Really interesting stuff. It's just like less but better. It's the idea of just like simplifying your life as much as possible. And by doing that, you have less stress, you have more time, you have more money if you do it right. And I was just like kind of overwhelmed with just stuff and too many commitments, too much going on, and this was just kind of a way for me to kind of slow down a little bit and really look at what's important in my life and make sure that I'm living my life and it's not kind of living me.
Yeah, no, I love that. I read that book a while ago, so it's not like super fresh in my mind, but it's like a very simple concept, even though it's like really difficult to execute. This idea to like simplify your life, prioritize things. And when I watch your videos, I do feel like that's more or less like what you try to, I don't know, teach, if that sounds pretentious. You know what I mean? But that's more or less like your thing or your message. And it's really cool. I was wondering also, and if I'm talking really fast, I usually do this at the beginning, my all a minute thoughts. But were you like a shopaholic of any kind, you know, where like, because I do find that a lot of people that I find, especially on YouTube, that talk about minimalism prior had like, not issues, but kind of with a lot of stuff and buying stuff and like this need for stuff.
So I wouldn't say shopaholic. I definitely like shopping was a hobby for me. It was like mostly like t-shirts and like cheaper stuff because I've always been kind of frugal. So it was just kind of like a hobby for me. And then I realized like, I actually started minimalism as a challenge. When I started YouTube, I tried living like Matt D'Avella for a week because I thought it'd be a good video. And then after I did that, I was like, wow, this is actually like I woke up 2 hours earlier every day. I got so much more stuff done. I cleaned out my closet and like got rid of a bunch of stuff. I'm like, I don't even need this stuff. I feel way better without it. Everything's more organized. And I was like, this is amazing. So it was just kind of like, I kind of like stumbled into it. And then I kind of also realized, so I was into the FIRE movement, which is financial independence and retire early. And I realized that a lot of the same core values of minimalism kind of go along with that, where it's like, if you say no to a bunch of stuff now, it'll like, you know, have a lot of rewards in the future. If you don't buy this thing, you'll have more money. You'll also have more space. You won't. So yeah, it's kind of weird how I got into it, but that's kind of the story, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's really cool that you did it for content, and then you were kind of like, wait, actually, this is great. You have this like backdrop that you do where like your closet is open. and you have like just like the bare minimum hanging there, and I'm like, oh, I wish I could get to that. I'm by no means a minimalist, but I'm like really into decluttering and like getting rid of as much as possible of things. And I wanted to talk to you about that because it's really interesting. I don't know if I saw this in your video or someone else's thing, but some people that maybe didn't call themselves a minimalist either kind of lived by that principle even with their clothing. I know Steve Jobs, I mean, he was a minimalist, but he like wore the same stuff. He only had like 8 things hanging in his closet. And Einstein, I think, only wore like 1 suit every single day. Like when you did that for a week, did you find that it was just like, that it made like a considerable difference to own less clothes? And I'm particularly curious about the clothing part because, I mean, maybe because I'm a girl and it's just like really stressful sometimes to get dressed.
Yeah, so the clothes, like, it's not life-changing, it's clothes. But I will say that I also got a brand deal, so it's like I have these shirts that I wear all the time. And I actually contacted them because I wanted like high quality shirts. I'm kind of like a taller guy. I've got a long torso, so it's hard to find shirts that fit. And when I was going through my closet, I realized that like literally like 80% of the shirts weren't like a 60 or above for me. Like they weren't my favorite thing. I hardly wore them. Sometimes I'd wear them and then I was like, I don't even know I had this thing. And then once I went through a bunch of that stuff and I was left with just my favorite stuff, I'm like, I get to wear my favorite thing every single day. Like, this is so nice. I don't have to think about it. And right now I wear, like, I constantly have, well, it's a podcast. I constantly have black pants on, and then any color shirt matches with that. So every day I can just grab my pair of black pants, reach in, grab any shirt. They all fit really good. They all match. And it's just like one less thing that you have to worry about. You're always like, once you find your style or your clothes or your 20 outfits or whatever they are, you feel confident in them and you like them. So it's like, it's just really simplifying, and then you get to have your favorite thing every single day. It's like super cool.
Yeah, I love that, what you just said. It's like a way of reframing what it actually means to own less things. I get to wear my favorite things all the time. That's actually a really cool way of putting it, instead of being like, oh, I love that, but I'm saving it for like a special occasion. I'm laughing because you were like, it's clothes, it's not life-changing. And I'm like, oh, to be a guy. To be a guy. So speaking of, you've mentioned this in some videos, and it intrigues me because you're married, right?
Yep.
And your wife is not a minimalist. Like she's not like you.
No, not really. She's she's kind of like in between, but definitely has a lot of stuff, and it's not a minimalist now. Yeah. And we also have a daughter that's 9 months old right now. So
yeah,
she's also not a minimalist.
Maybe she will be. Maybe she'll take after Dad.
We'll see.
But what does that look like? Like living, because I mean, I'm sure you know who Mary Kondo is.
Yep.
So she recently, she came out and everyone's talking about it because she's like, I'm no longer a minimalist because she has kids. But prior, she used to say things like that it didn't matter if anyone else was doing what you were doing, to just focus on like your space. Is that more or less what you do?
So she's not like crazy the other way. I think what we did was, we started with financial talks, starting with that, and then going into minimalism, where I was like, look, if we have less stuff and you know, we spend less, we do all this stuff, look at all the benefits, and this is kind of why I'm doing this. And then she realized that, like, that's cool. She doesn't have to do it exactly, but we're also on the same page where she's not going to go out and buy a bunch of stuff and fill the space that I keep emptying. But we also realized that, like, it's not the end of the world if we are slightly off. We don't have to both be extreme in these certain ways. I don't need a lot of stuff to be happy. She likes a little bit more stuff, and I don't need my house to be perfect, which I think a lot of people, when they get into minimalism, they're like, I want it to be perfect. I want it to look like Pinterest. I want it to look like this YouTuber. And it's like, well, my house doesn't always look like that. You know, like we do have stuff that we don't absolutely need, and that's okay. It's more of like trying to find some balance and definitely toning things down. So, try to look at it as a positive thing instead of like a way of strife between like couples or whatever. So I don't know.
Right. No, I think that's cool. I was really curious because I feel someone else recently posted about how this ex-husband of some minimalist person came out and said something like, yeah, we broke up because, you know, if I put something down in the wrong place, it was like the biggest thing ever. So it doesn't, but probably because it stressed that person out, right? Like she was so adamant about living a minimalist lifestyle that it stressed her out. So you don't get stressed, is what I'm saying, like with someone else's clutter.
I mean,
Or
yeah,
sometimes. I'm putting you in an awkward
occasionally.
position.
No, it's all good. No, because it's like real stuff. This is what people actually deal with. Yeah, no, it is stressful sometimes, but I've also like, you know what? I do stuff that's probably stressful for her. If that means like I always put her shoes back when she just leaves them on the floor because we have this little thing, it's like, that's okay. It's not such a big deal. I do stuff that's like, I'm not always perfect. I leave stuff on the counter and like, it just kind of is what it is. But I think constantly kind of talking about it and being on the same page and sharing stuff has really been helpful of like, you know, all the benefits of it and why we're kind of choosing that lifestyle. And then when your house is wicked clean, both of you are like, oh my goodness, this is so much better when you walk into a clean house, or you can clean your house in like 3 minutes because you don't have that much stuff. That's been super beneficial for us, like seeing the result and then trying to keep it that way.
Yeah, that much is super true. I think that I've never had a lot of things. Well, I also don't have kids, so who knows, you know, but I've never had a lot of things like in my living room or kitchen or whatever, but I think it's a key sign that you have way too many clothes. If like every time you're gonna get dressed, it's like a tornado hit your bedroom or your closet, because it's just not, things are not accessible, you know, there's too much, and yeah, it gets really cluttered. But based on what you were saying, were you all, because you said that, you know, you were into the FIRE, is it called FIRE movement? So were you always very, because I'm curious, you know, like Christina, she kind of was like obsessed with shopping and things like that, like had a shopaholic problem, and then kind of became obsessed with minimalism. So I almost feel like there's like a personality thing there, and you seem to have been like very good with discipline even prior to minimalism. Like, do you think there's something to that in in becoming a minimalist and taking it on as a lifestyle? I know you hate the word, but you know.
Yeah,
for the
no, it's
concept
good.
of
It's
the-
good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting because there's definitely a lot of like, I obsess about things like extremely. Like that's why I'm good at YouTube, is because it's something that I've obsessed about. Like I literally think about it all the time. And then like minimalism, so, and then the FIRE movement, I have these certain things, and I definitely think there are traits where I've met a ton of other people who are into minimalism or like the stuff. I've met some people who subscribe or whatever, and I'm like, we're very similar people, like crazy similar people. We watch the same stuff, we listen to the same, like very strange how close we are to each other. So I definitely think there is a personality thing, but there's also been people I met who are like crazy off the other end, like totally in it for different reasons. There's like a million reasons why somebody would get into minimalism. Some people like want to be it's to be more green, other people it's to save money, other people it's for the clean house, lower stress, like whatever it is. Like there's tons of different reasons to get into it, but there's definitely something about obsessing and maybe like a little OCD where you love, like it's super rewarding when you clean out a room and you're like, that was so nice to just get rid of all this stuff and my house is clean. Now I'm like actually happy. And other people like, I don't care at all about having, you know, stuff on my floor. So it kind of depends, but there's definitely something about that.
Yeah, I think you're describing like me and my fiance. I'm like that. Like if I have an audition or anything like that, like I have to clean first, because then I feel like I can concentrate and like be in peace. And he can have clothes lying absolutely everywhere and be like, what's wrong? What's happening? You know, like just doesn't. But at the same time, he owns very little things. So I think that proves like kind of like what you're saying, that it can be, it's interesting. Like it can be like a personality thing, but then by the same token, not necessarily. So I think one thing that I see a lot, or I hear a lot, is like this concept, like on the other side of like maybe negative things of minimalism or why people don't like it. One is like that somehow minimalism is like a privilege thing, where like, you know, you can afford things, but you go out of your way to not buy things. I don't know the exact reasoning. I don't know if I'm saying it the right way, but that's one thing that I that I see come up. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, like I've definitely heard that, but some people, all right, so it's weird. Like I got crazy comments on my YouTube channel, which is like kind of like a broad
bet.
spectrum of people. And half of them are like, this is like my everyday life, or like minimalism is the new poor. And then other people are like, you're so privileged. Why do you have such a big house? I'm like, it's a free house. Like, so it's people are so crazy on other sides. I think it's like, if somebody has a problem with it, it's probably because they're slightly jealous and want to do it, or like I don't know, like a lot of people have different problems that they're projecting onto other people. Like, no, I would never do that. You live a miserable life. It's like, okay, well, maybe you don't want to actually like clean up your life. Like maybe
Right.
that's your defense mechanism to not make progress in your life right now because you think it would ruin it. Or like maybe I've seen somebody who didn't have a lot of stuff. Like somebody said that if I knew somebody who didn't have a lot of toys for their kids and they grew up to be a serial killer, or like every kid that I've seen that didn't have toys grew up to be a serial killer. I'm like, how many serial killers do you know? But like just
Yeah.
people like to take things to extremes and just kind of run with it as an excuse to not do anything is kind of like what I see. And like not everybody should be a minimalist. Like it's not for everybody. But if you have a problem, this is definitely a cure for it, is like kind of like setting up your life to just make it as easy as possible for yourself and take off a lot of stress is kind of like just like the main thing. You don't have to go extreme with it. Just like try to help yourself out.
Yeah, and I like what you said about people project, because I think there is something about minimalism that can be very triggering, because from everything that I've seen and read, it's like it almost feels like you're on this, like, you know, that little cartoon with like the, is it a rat, or that's like just like on the wheel?
Yeah.
That's it feels like minimalism is hopping off that, like in society, like where you're not always striving for this and striving for the other thing. And it's interesting because, I mean, that can be very triggering for people, to tell people that you don't actually need, you know, the newest car and the hottest house, and, you know, to stay in all these luxury places when you travel, and to post with your Rolex, and to do, you know. So I think a lot of people don't understand that, and I think it's okay, because it's a personal thing. I mean, I feel like in my 20s, if somebody was like, oh, you know, you should get rid of stuff, I would have been like, no.
Yeah.
You know, I wouldn't have wanted to at all. I would have been like, but I love my stuff. And now I feel like I just turned 30, so obviously I'm so mature. But I do feel like for the last 2 years, there's been like a shift in how I see things, and like a lot of questioning of like, why do I even want that? And why is that so important to me? And this is something that, you know, Christina and I talked about a lot, because it's like this almost like perpetually wanting things. It's like constantly being unsatisfied with what you do have. And I think that's something that you touch on a lot, like what true wealth actually looks like and actual freedom in your life looks like.
Yeah, I think, a lot of people, I think it's kind of this society that's been built by people trying to make money, where you see ads, like you see social media, and everything's about like getting this quick dopamine high, and then you pay for it for a really long time. And have you read the book, The 4-Hour Work Week, Tim Ferriss?
No, I just watched that video though, because I was looking at your videos to make sure I knew what to ask you.
Okay, yeah. I absolutely love that book. And that's kind of what I have structured my life around, like that minimalism, fire movement. And it's this idea that, which is kind of like minimalism as well, where if like you lower your expenses a lot, you free up a lot of time, you automate everything. And then you don't need a ton of money to live a really nice lifestyle. If your expenses are like half as low as your neighbors, you can work 6 months a year. Like that, all it takes is living a different type of lifestyle, or automating more, and like just finding more efficient ways to earn money. And that's, I don't know, that's something that I'm really passionate about, is like freeing up time. I don't need to make $1 million a year. Like there's like 40% of people who make 100K plus are still living paycheck to paycheck. So like more money is not your answer. Spending less is your answer. And there's so many different like ways to hack your spending that like don't change your life at all. And that's what I'm really kind of focusing on, is like I can work, 5 to 10 hours a week and make more than I used to make. Or I could also structure my life differently and work 40 hours a week, or 50 or 60, which I was doing like a year and a half ago. So it just depends, like if you're taking a really long time to set up your life in a way that is really efficient and rewarding, so that you can take time to actually spend it with your family. Like, time is our most valuable asset, and yet nobody really cares about their time. They drive all the time. They're on their phone 5 hours a day. They watch 5 hours of TV. They like all this random stuff going on, and nobody actually thinks about, like, what do I want to do with my time? What if I wasn't stressed about work? What if all this stuff, like, what would my life actually look like? And for me, it's been nice to like spend time with my daughter and stuff. So I don't know.
Yeah, of course. A lot of things come to mind when I'm hearing you, because for example, I have a lot of free time because when I work, I make a decent amount of money, but then I'm not guaranteed work again. Then it's just like, it's like freelance. It's like, well, then keep auditioning and, we'll see. We'll see when you work again. And it's really interesting because when I was younger and I worked like in retail, I absolutely hated my life. Like, I wasn't full time, but I still worked like 35 hours, 36 hours, and I remember my first boyfriend in LA, like he lived such a like, I don't want to say chill, but he had like what you just said. He was the first person that like showed me that that's possible, that you don't need to be like grinding, hustling, that you can use your time more effectively. And but you said something that I think is actually kind of key. It's like, we don't really ask ourselves what we want to do. And I feel like that's a question that I'm confronted with a lot in my free time. And it's like, it's a different kind of problem, and it sounds like champagne problems, and maybe it is, but it's a different kind of like, what is my life? Like, what am I doing with my life? And I think if people slow down and stop, and if we don't fill our life with like the busy, then it's like, then we have to focus on like the actual truth of what our life is and isn't. And I think that's part of the reason people don't slow down, because they don't really want to ask themselves what they want out of life and what they want to do. It's much easier to just, chase the next designer bag and the shoes and the house and the vacation with your friends, and like not really think like, am I proud of the life that I'm living? Am I happy with what my day-to-day looks like? I think that's actually kind of like a scary question. And then maybe you don't like your life, maybe you don't like your job, maybe you don't like what you're doing, and then admitting that also means like, do I change it or do I stay unhappy? And now that I know that I'm unhappy, now I'm like, now it's not as easy to like pretend that I'm not happy or I am happy.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's why so many people are like constantly, if you're at a red light, you're on your phone. It's like, you don't want to be undistracted enough to realize that like, oh, wait a minute, I'm actually unhappy. And then you look at your life and you're like, I didn't want to be doing this. I've been doing this for 10 years. I didn't want to be doing this. It's like, well, are you going to blame somebody else, or are you going to take responsibility? And that's another reason to like, nope, shut it down. Just keep working, live for the weekend, do whatever. Because otherwise it's like, no, this is 100% you made choices that led you here. If like random bad stuff happens to people, and like that's totally true, but most stuff happens because of choices that you made, people you surrounded yourself with, where you chose to live. And a lot of people don't want that responsibility. It's a lot of responsibility. So like, even like becoming a YouTuber or being an actor, and I've done some acting as well, and like I don't know, a lot of people don't think it's possible to do that stuff, to start a music career, but then they'll never try, because if they try, they can also fail, and then they'll see themselves as a failure. Other people might see themselves as a failure. So it's much easier to say, no, like, you can't do that. It's just not possible. And like kind of shut stuff down, and then just kind of dopamine high yourself through the week by buying stuff, which is like the simplest thing to do. And people, like companies, spend billions of dollars to try to get a few seconds of people's time on, different things. Like that's what, which is interesting, because that's what we talk about this stuff, and then we're running a podcast. How we make money on the podcast is by selling people's attention, or YouTube channel, or whatever it is. And that's how everything works. Like, people are selling attention. People are buying your attention. So you have to be really conscious of that. But people are okay with that, because that's what makes them happy. Like, even like refreshing your email or something like that, it's literally designed like a slot machine, where you get like this little high of like, oh, is there going to be something new? Is it something important? That's why you always think about that and checking your email. So yeah, it's a really messed up world right now, but people just kind of like are okay with it, because it means they don't have to take responsibility.
Yeah, and I think it's also, I think we also just accept it blatantly, you know? I haven't monetized this podcast yet.
Okay, well, yeah, that's how you will do it. Yeah.
So this is pure. This episode is pure. I want the record to show.
Okay.
No, but that's not my point. I think we've come to expect advertising, and it's just like another thing that we're like, oh, okay, I guess, you know? And it reminds me of that episode, I don't know if you've seen Black Mirror, where like your life, you earn, I don't even know if it's money, but it's like, it's almost like based on how much money you make or how much you earn, you can bypass commercials and stuff like that when you're watching something. And then if you don't have enough money, you're forced to watch the commercials. Have you seen that episode?
I thought I'd seen them all, but I don't remember that one. Interesting.
Yeah, and these people live in rooms full of screens, and like there's no way to bypass the information. And I think maybe that goes back to what we were saying about kind of privileged, you know what I mean? To be at a place in your life, because I am privileged, you know, and so like I can like take the time to like discern what I want to consume more, or like maybe think about those things more, versus if I was like, I don't know, a single mom and, you know, like really worried about feeding my kid or whatnot. That might be different. But I mean, maybe that's what's triggering, but at the same time, I feel like it's not easy, but it's like, it is, like you said, like a solution, like minimalism and simplifying your life in general can bring you like, oh my God, my voice. Like it can bring you more happiness, because it can make you realize what you're chasing and for what reasons, you know? Because like even in that example of like a single mom is like, I don't know, it's like, who is the single mom also maybe trying to keep up with, you know what I mean, in a scenario where it isn't just survival. And I think we all do that. And I don't know, I like that what you're saying sounds a lot like taking accountability for what your life looks like and how you can change it, you know? If you have thousands of dollars in credit card debt, it's like, why? You know, did you actually need everything that you bought? Or are you, like you said, are you just like consuming because that's your version of numbing out? Just how someone else's version of numbing out can be like constantly eating out and all of these things, you know?
Yeah, I think there's also like, we'll just keep going with the single mom thing.
Yeah.
There is that, I forget what it's called, but it's something about like, if you say that it's like, well, it's horrible circumstances, all this bad luck, then you're taking away that person's power to have any control over their life. So you're saying that, like, yes, bad stuff does happen, but you're saying people can't change. Like, you've seen these rags to riches story like constantly. It's all decisions that you make that lead you to that place. So I don't know, like I've had like great, I don't know, like was lucky to have good parents who are together and like grow up, I don't know, with New Hampshire, it's not like anywhere cool. But like get a good work ethic, I guess. But then I also chose to work like crazy. So it's like some stuff is given to you, but other stuff is like you have that because you did something for it, which I don't know. So it's a weird balance, but I really like taking extreme ownership of everything that you can. The good and the bad is like, well, it's probably because of something that, you know, decisions that you made.
Yeah, and I think that that's also really empowering, because if something didn't work out and you're trying to see your role in that, I think it can also facilitate learning about yourself and then like what you can do better, and hopefully the next situation that you're in that's similar to that turn out differently because you'll contribute to it differently. But I want to go back to what you're saying about like this, like just starting, because for example, I find people that are on YouTube fascinating because you guys are so like just out there on the internet. Like for example, this podcast, when I first posted it, gave me a lot of anxiety because it's like I'm doing something where I'm not a character. Like this is just me talking to people. So any criticism is about me. It's not about, you know, the character or the show or whatever. There's no script here. It's all me. So you guys do that like on steroids because you guys are like posting content all the time. And I guess I'm curious, like, how that looked like for you, like starting to post on YouTube, because I think whether it's YouTube or doing makeup videos or doing whatever, being a blogger, I don't know, whatever it's called nowadays, that's something that a lot of people want to do. And and you've said this in videos before about like how the only thing truly getting in your way is yourself, like your own thoughts and whatnot. But yeah, I'm curious what how that looked like for you, like how you overcame that like anxiety of like, I'm on the internet.
So I'm probably one of the most introverted people you'll ever meet. Like I'll talk to 5 people a week, and most of them are family. All of them are family, and I have one friend. And it's all, I've always been like that, and I'm totally happy this way.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
it is
yeah.
what it is.
I'm just laughing at how like I'm the same.
Oh really? So, yeah. See, it's like
I'm
people
like,
who
I
are
have 1 or 2 friends.
people are like similar people are into similar stuff. It's so weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I first started, it was awkward. You know what? Like nobody watched my videos, and people who did are your family and friends. And now you're like saying random stuff, and it's horrible because nobody starts doing videos or podcasts or playing basketball being very good at it. It takes practice. So that's horrible. But I was so excited about what I was talking about. I didn't really care. I started off talking about finances. I was really into it at the time. I still am. And I was just excited to share what I was learning with people. So it didn't really matter as much. And then eventually, as it grew to a lot bigger, you start getting hate stuff. Like anytime a video is successful, you get an insane amount of hate comments because it got out of your circle of your supporters. So when you have negative comments, it shows that the video is doing well, generally. And I've kind of heard this from a couple of different people that nobody who's doing what you're doing or better, like no successful person will comment negative stuff. Have you ever seen a successful person like go on somebody else's video and bash them for something that they've said? Probably not. So it's probably somebody who's worse than you, who you wouldn't want their advice. They're in a bad situation. They're they had a bad day and they're letting it out on some person on the internet. So it took me a really long time to kind of realize that. And now like, I don't really care. I will specifically put stuff in videos to trigger people, to kind of get them to comment, because it makes my video do better. So like if I can say like, we don't have a pet right now because it doesn't make sense. We have a baby, it'll save money. And I'll just be like, if you want to save money, don't have a pet. It's a horrible idea. Like there's a better way to say that.
Yeah.
But I won't say it like that extreme, but I'll say it in a way that like, this is very true. Pets cost like $5,000 a year per pet. So it's a very good thing if you're living paycheck to paycheck. Here's like a car if you don't have this pet. But I'll say it in a way that will like kind of annoy people, and then all the dog and cat people are like, this is the best investment I've ever made. I'm like, I specifically said right after I said that triggering thing that it's for me and my decision. For other people it's different, like whatever. So but like you have to kind of be okay with like people are gonna attack you, and those people are sad people, and that's really okay. And I've said stuff I don't agree with. I've said dumb stuff. I look at my videos 6 months ago, I'm like, what a horrible, like this is so cringe. And you just kind of don't look at it. Like just keep, like you post it and you move on to the next week. Post it, move on to the next week. If you do a horrible video, it flops, everybody hates it. You got 51 others that are coming out this year. It doesn't even matter. So I just kind of keep looking forward, and like, yeah, that's kind of my philosophy on the hate, because that scares a lot of people. But like nobody worthwhile will hate on you. So, yeah.
I like that. I think that's interesting. I feel like it does take practice though. You know what I mean?
For sure,
Because at first it's like, I mean, it's different because again, it's not really me, but I used to feel really offended when people disliked my character, like someone that I was playing, to the point where they wanted me to know, to the point where like they've seen something on TV and they're coming to my Instagram to tell me that I suck or that I'm like a this or that or whatever. And sometimes it used to it's not that it would consume my days, but it would definitely give me like some weird panic of like, oh my God, and now I find it really funny. Like when, like when I start seeing, I play a cop on this show right now, and she's nosy. She's a cop. Like that's what she's supposed to be, But people hate me. Like it's so funny. Like people are like, oh God, like Betty needs to shut the fuck up. and I just want somebody to punch her, and like all these things. And I'm actually like, for the first time I think in my life, like I genuinely, like, I saw that, and I think immediately I found it really funny. But with when I've posted podcast things, and I think the first clip that I posted, similar to what you were saying, I knew that it was something that a lot of people were going to have an opinion on. But just for the hell of it, I was like, yeah, that's the clip I'm going to post. And the thing is like, I thought that I could handle it, but there was moments where I was like, oh my God, what have I done? You know, like at night waking up with heartburn, like, oh, shit, you know? And so I think that's the part that I mean about you guys. Like, it's just you, like, it's your life. It's your, and I think I find it really cool that you can like not really care anymore, you know?
Yeah, it's also, so I don't know, because like some people do day vlogs, and that's probably like worse, but I do more like I research my stuff ahead of time, and I know that what I'm saying is true. So if somebody has a problem with it, they have a problem with like the stat that I mentioned, or the habit that I chose to do for myself. Like I do intermittent fasting, and I'll say it's a way to save money, or it's a way to like make yourself feel better, to lose weight, do whatever. And people are like, oh, it's a horrible thing. Like, I would die if I tried that. I'm like, well, I specifically said it was for me. This is something that has helped me. So if you're going to read into that, like, whatever. So, but it did take, like, you do get that, like, personal. Like, people come against you personally when you post yourself on the internet. And, like, for your character, like, if you come over to somebody's Instagram, like, what kind of day are you having to do that? Or what type of person are you, you know? So, but it does take some practice. But after a while, you just kind of have to look at it as, like it's almost like good, like it means you're reaching people who aren't your supporters. So like it took me a while, but after I saw enough people kind of say that, I realized that like this has zero effect on my life, and these people just need somebody to vent at. So like it's okay, like you just feel compassion for them and kind of move on. Like that's just all it is.
Yeah, no, I like that. I think that's very true. Yeah, I had other thoughts, but I'm gonna keep them to myself.
That's okay.
So on the subject of like friends and family, and like it's interesting because you said that some of the people that first saw your videos were the people that knew you, that was your audience. Do you feel like because I think this also comes up with when you want to change anything about your life, like when I started, it's funny, when I started therapy, and also when I told my family, like, oh, I'm starting a podcast, and my mom was like, about what? I was like, oh, mental health, and like maybe other stuff related to that. And she's like, oh, okay. It was like a weird, and I think when you start doing something that's very different than what your family is used to, or maybe nobody has ever done it or anything like that, I think, I don't know, not that it created like a lot of drama or a rift, but that make you feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, like I don't know anybody else, like until recently I've met some people, but I didn't know anybody else who's done this, so I didn't know it could be a thing. But it's interesting, like, yeah, you start as this, it's awkward, people see you're like you at your worst, like while you're making horrible stuff that's hard to watch. And my family was fortunate, my family was supportive, but they didn't really think it was going to be anything. I didn't think it was going to be anything. And then as it's grown bigger, like my nephews and my friends and siblings, like everybody I know wants to start a YouTube channel, and it's kind of because of me. And so it's like interesting. They don't care until like you become successful, and then they're like, oh, like that's of course, but it's also for me. I like I'm very competitive, so it's been something where I've like, it's almost like that, like the football players, like nobody believed in me. And that kind of thing where I'm like, and it started by just like putting in the reps. Like if I just keep going, there's this compound effect that's going to happen where if I get a 1% better every week, I learn one new skill every week, I keep putting it out there, in like 3 years, I think almost anybody, if you continue to get better over 3 years, can make a full-time income from doing anything, but especially YouTube, podcasting, social media, because I've seen so many people do it inside of 1 year. Who are just nobody, and then you put in a bunch of work. The beginning is horrible. You don't quit at that beginning, which is what I've seen a bunch of other people quit, and then you just carry on through. So yeah, it's a little awkward, and especially like when you say weird stuff or you're into weird things. Like, I don't know anybody else is into minimalism. I talk about it all the time, like whatever. But I also don't have anybody else to talk to it about. So like I talk to my other friends, who is the camera and the people behind it. So yeah, it's kind of interesting, but that's kind of what's happened.
No, that is interesting, because I also know there's a lot of people in my family now that like more openly are like, yeah, I started therapy or things like that. And I feel, but it's like a cool feeling that, you know, that like, that you've sort of given someone else, not permission, but a little bit of like that encouragement that they needed to be like, yeah, I guess this isn't that weird, you know, which it sounds like is what you did a little bit for some of the people around you.
Yeah, I mean, it's like that with my wife's in therapy, and other people I know are in therapy, and it's something people didn't used to talk about. And even like nobody talks about their stuff or their finances or their mental health or how their stuff affects their mental health. Like, who do you know that like talks about that? Like, well, like we might know people because we're weird, but it's not like a normal thing. But like we're kind of like normalizing that. Like, no, this thing that is normal, the American dream, all this consumerism is bad for almost every area of your life. And it's okay to not do what everybody else is doing, not have the best house, not have the best car, not have flashy clothes, and just be happy with who you are and the stuff that you have. And very few people are preaching this, like it's not health and wealth. It's like, just like be a normal human being and just be happy. And it's like not like very flashy, but it's, I don't know, it's true. So. Yeah,
I think so too. And I do know people that talk about, you know, but not that much. And I think I think I got to the point too with a lot of the stuff that I talk about all the time, or that I want to talk about all the time, where I feel like sometimes people are like, oh, this again, really, you know? So I was like, you know what? There's a lot of people out there that would like to talk about this, and I want to talk to them about it. And for me, podcasts have always really, you know, it's funny because what you said is true. There's been, if I am editing something and I listen to it too many times, I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? I suck. I'm so embarrassing. Like, but then if I just let it go and keep going, I'm like, no, like right now talking to you, I'm like, this is why I do it, because this is fun. And I'm excited that I get to like talk to you and pick your brain about these things, you know? And I lost my train of thought. What were we talking about?
Honestly don't know, but I was just gonna say that this is like therapy for me. I love going on podcasts. I love doing podcasts because I never really talk, and yeah, so it's different for everybody. And it's also like yeah, I like the structure of podcasts where it's just people like sharing their like just real conversations and real stuff that people are talking about. Like YouTube, in order to be successful, you can't just post something like this. Like you could, but like for a YouTube video, it has to be polished, it has to be thought out. You have to think about retention. And there is something about having real conversation about stuff that most people aren't having normal conversations about, that I really enjoy. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say about, like, for me, listening to podcasts, sometimes people will say like, yeah, I don't know, this podcast was really selfish, I just talked about my stuff. And I'm like, no, this was really helpful, because I actually feel a lot of the same things that this person is talking about. And then all of a sudden I feel like it's almost like listening in. My first therapist would do this sometimes. He'd be like, okay, record today's session. And then he's like, your homework is to listen to it twice. And it's almost like you're not listening to yourself, because you're not used to your voice the way it actually sounds. It sounds different in your head. And I think by the second time you're listening to it, it's almost like just listening to another person. I almost think that podcast, typically the ones you follow, there's some kind of like shared interest or personality type thing. And if you don't have the ability to talk to people about things that are quote unquote weird, which is what the whole premise of this podcast is, if you listen in on a podcast about it, I think you can get that kind of permission that we're talking about, or that kind of like, you know what, yeah, they're right. And maybe nobody around me understands it, but I know there's people out there somewhere that do. And I think that's really cool. And I think you do that in your videos as well. You know, like all the stuff that you post about, like even if people don't buy the book that you're talking about, I think it goes like beyond that at that point, you know, where like Because I mean, I don't follow like every single minimalist on the planet. I relate to your videos, I relate to Christina's videos, and I really like Malama Life, I think is her YouTube. You know, and I think like I get, regardless, and Rick Rubin talks about this in his book. It's like, if you're ultimately proud of what you post, and if someone else gets that exact same thing that you're proud of or something different, like, it doesn't matter. It's not up to you anymore, and like, you did your part. And I agree with that, and I think that that's like what you guys do, which is really cool.
Yeah, I think you can only control what you can control, and like sometimes you have to kind of just let it go and move on to the next thing. But that's something that I've really tried to make a shift towards recently, is instead of trying to teach people stuff, or like there's two ways to do the exact same video. One of it is to like say, here's how to save money, and the other one's, or how to simplify your life, and the other one's like, here's how I'm doing it. And that's what I've tried to do, is just like, you know what, this is just me and what I'm doing. I'm going to try to make it as entertaining as possible, but it's just like different habits I'm doing, different ways I'm trying to help myself. And like there's these little things like the 2-minute rule and all these different habits that have like literally changed my life. And that's why I get excited like pretty much every single week about, it's also like I'm very like ADHD or whatever it is, where I like obsess about certain things. But like every week I'm like, this is like so, I know this is going to help people. I'm really proud of it. It's great. And then you look back like a month from now, like it's horrible. But it's like constantly just moving on to the next thing and just trying to like get a little bit better and then share how I got a little bit better. So I don't know. It's fun.
No, and I'm sure you're the only one that thinks it's that bad, you know, and like other people, like, you know, like me looking at your videos, I'm like, no, I enjoy your videos, you know, I'm not you. So obviously I'm not thinking the stuff that you're thinking. But to pivot a little bit into what you just said, like, what are some of the things that, like, anyone listening to this that's like interested, like, I don't know if 3 tips is cliche, but like the things, some of the things that they can implement, or that like you feel like have changed your life the most, or that you just constantly do because it's been like for the better and you're like never going back.
Okay. So
no pressure.
No, let me think about this for a sec. All right, so the first one has nothing to do with what we've been talking about, but it's house hacking. If you don't know what that is, it's like buying a multifamily, living in one unit, renting the other ones out. Allows you to live for free. You generally drops your budget by like 30%. You can start saving right off the bat. That has been the one thing that changed my life. Let me leave my job. Let me start YouTube. Let everything happen. Let us have a kid when we're having a kid. Everything about it has come from the financial decisions that I've made. So I would look into your finances, and that frees up your entire life. But as far as like habits go, I would say like the 2-minute rule, which is kind of like breaking down any, like if you want to go to the gym, instead of committing to go to the gym, which is really hard for a lot of people, commit to putting on your shoes and your workout clothes, go sit in the car. If you want to come back inside, you can, but that's all you're committing to. 90% of the time, 100% of the time, when you go and sit in your car, you're like, all right, I'm already here. Might as well just go to the gym. Like, I already did the hardest part is getting started. So can you break down every habit into like the smallest possible thing? And then I would say like kind of the third one, I don't know if these are like exactly what you're looking for, but whatever. Is
no,
like
I
writing
love these.
is writing down one thing that you're going to get done that day, that if you get that thing done, you will feel like your day was a success. And that's what I do every single day, where you can have 20 things on your to-do list, but you can do 20 things and feel like you accomplished nothing. So what is one thing that you can do that you will do before anything else, that if you get that done, it'll move you closer to being an actor, to being a podcaster, a YouTuber, to having a clean home, to being a better wife, or whatever it is. And really focus down, instead of having 20 things, like really narrow down your focus onto the things that are truly important and will actually make a difference in your life. And I use all those all the time. So
Yeah, no, that was great. That was, more than what I was looking for. I really, sorry, my thing is falling off. No, I really like those. The 2-minute rule, that one's interesting. Because I feel like it's true. Like, sometimes I don't want to do anything, but then if I put on the workout clothes, it almost feels like I'm halfway there. It's like, well, might as well, because I got dressed for it, type of thing. So I think that's actually really interesting, because I wonder if people would go to their car and then just go back upstairs. I don't think so, because I think you'd also like shame yourself into like, I was at the car, why didn't I just go?
Exactly. You'll feel guilty about it afterwards. And it works on so many different things. Like, if like, okay, I want to start reading. Like I'm committing to, this is what I do. I commit to read one page of a book. If I read one page, that's great. Sometimes you read 20, but at least you're doing something. And it's like, all right, I can commit to one page. It's hard to talk yourself out of being able to read one page, or out of going to the gym. Like if the car is too easy and you do actually back out, commit to going in for 5 minutes and then set an alarm. And after 5 minutes, you walk out. If you do that like once or twice, you're gonna be like, well, this is stupid. I'm already here. I'm just gonna stay. And you're gonna like want to stay because you force yourself to do stuff. Even like cleaning up after like the dishes like take 2 minutes, or you can be stressed about them the entire night because they're sitting there in a pile. Like it's so simple, and it makes your life so much easier. Like just like set a timer for 2 minutes, get like a bunch of stuff done, and then like just you don't have to worry about it. It's just like off your mind. It's so much easier.
I'm laughing at your dishes example.
Well, I don't know.
Because
it's something that
no,
needs to happen.
I'm not laughing at you. I just think it's funny because I think that's more or less me. Like I'm so proud of myself if I wash like my plate afterwards, or I rinse it and put it in the dishwasher. I'm like, yes, very productive. So you also talk about, because you have a lot of videos on like productivity and like how to, I mean, essentially hijack yourself a little bit to do the things, which is kind of what that 2-minute rule is. Do you also like do that? I think you talked about blocking time in one of your videos, I think. Like, is that how you tackle YouTube? Like, do you have like, I do YouTube Mondays and Thursdays, and then I set like 6 hours for it, and then I don't do it in the rest of the week. I think you have a video on that, and I find that really interesting because I tried it yesterday with like some podcast stuff. I was like, I'm going to sit here and work on this for like 2 hours, and it was like 2.5 hours passed. But then I got so much done, and I was like, why don't I do this instead of just kind of like, oh, I'll dabble, and then you didn't do anything and you're just scattered and stressed.
Yeah, so something that I like to do is a lot of this I got like starting down like the 4-hour work week thing. It's a bunch of productivity stuff. So first of all, with YouTube, I outsource a lot of stuff, editors, thumbnails, some writing stuff, strategy stuff, everything I can outsource, I outsource. And then the rest is like not all that much. It's shooting videos, which is the thing I'm actually good at and I actually enjoy doing. So I started with outsourcing as much as I could. And then when I have different projects, like I shoot commercials for people occasionally where I'll like do a product or whatever. And I've had those take like forever. They'll take like, I'll work on them for weeks or like shoot over a couple days. And then a while ago, I started like, I set a timer for 2 hours and I got this insane amount of like, I shot an entire thing in 2 hours, which I was planning on taking like a few days. And I just started doing that to like different stuff where I'm like, all right, I have 1 hour to shoot this YouTube video. And I'll get it done in an hour because that's how much time you have. And it's like Parkinson's law where work will fill the amount of time that you have for it, which is very true. Like if you have a project for school, you'll get it done at midnight the night before because that's exactly what the deadline is. Or if you give yourself 2 hours, you'll just get it done in those 2 hours. So I love setting timers for stuff. And then that also makes me so much more productive when you have those constraints. It's like kind of like, you can't play a game like of chess if there are no rules. So you need rules in your life in order to actually like do anything or like, move forward, I guess. So that's just one of the rules that I like for myself. I don't really time block my days a lot because I don't do a lot, but I have something I've been working on recently is green zoning, which is you have a time of the day where you're most productive. For me, it's like 7 o'clock till like 9:30, 10 o'clock. And pretty much I will get my most important stuff done at that time. And then you generally like the afternoons, my yellow zone where I'm not as productive, I'm not as creative, I don't think as clearly. So I get less important stuff done then. And then maybe 2 o'clock on is my red zone where like I'm not going to be that productive. So I just don't work. So that's where I've kind of like shifted into like kind of hacking my body. And when I think the clearest is when I do my creative stuff. When I don't think the clearest is when I do my grunt stuff. And just kind of helping myself out that way as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. I think I'm somewhat similar. Like, for example, if I have an audition, I hate, like, above everything to try and do it at night. Like, for me, it has to be the thing I do within 3 hours of waking up, ideally, because I think also this, like, it's almost like this, I don't know if foreboding is the word, but it's like this thing that gives you a lot of anxiety because it has to get done. And I feel so much better about myself when it's done and sent, and then I don't have to think about it. So I really like what you're saying. And I definitely thought that you time blocked a lot more
Uh,
because of I think because I saw it once on like a video you did about like some planner you use.
Yeah, so I've done that on and off. I will like schedule out sometimes, but like some people time block like every 30 minutes of their day, and honestly, I don't work that much, so it would kind of be pointless. Um, so yeah, I don't really do that. I just do the I try to take the mornings to get my stuff done, and like literally by 12 o'clock, like almost every single day I'm done work. So like it's kind of pointless to time block.
Yeah. And have you always been good at I think keeping your word like to yourself, because I do think that's like, I know that sounds weird, but I think that that's where a lot of us go wrong. Like maybe, like with the typical like, oh, it's January 1st, I'm going to the gym in the morning, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and then you kind of fall off. Like
Mm.
I don't know, like as I'm hearing you say these things, I also realize if it's I want to be very badly a person that wakes up and like works out in the morning, but I always work out more towards like the middle of the day or the evening. It just happens that way for me. And I wonder if that's just something that I should like make peace with and then just work out in the evening, because that's what I tend to do. And then when I tell myself, no, okay, I'm going to start working out in the morning, and then I don't do it, I feel kind of shitty about myself.
Yeah, no,
So I don't know how
like
you've always had a good relationship with yourself in that way.
no, I mean it's so I've been working out for a while, so that's been something. But I've always had problems with procrastinating. I'm naturally a very lazy person. I don't want to do anything. Um, but like I always like if you don't do anything for like a week, which like once I left my job and started doing other stuff, I was like, okay, like I literally didn't do anything this week, and you start to feel crappy about yourself.
Yeah.
So I like to have that. Like that's why I love having that one thing I do every day, because then I'm like, okay, at least I did this today.
Hmm.
And I'll put like going to the gym on there and other stuff, and I try to do, just build habits. Like there's like habit stacking where after I finish my coffee is when I, read one page of a book, and taking a habit that you're already doing and adding something else on. So I like to have, routines that are kind of productive, and then, yeah. So I don't know what the original question was for this, but
It probably wasn't a question. It was just me like, what do you think about my thought? No, I think it was more like, no, I like what you're saying. It's very honest, because I live a freelance life, and I know exactly what you're talking about, where like there's some days where it's like I did nothing, and then when I'm in therapy, she's like, but why did you feel the need to do something that day if there wasn't anything that pressing? And I'm like, because I'm wasting my life. It can feel like that. But then if you do make a list and if you check something off, yeah, it just gives you like peace of mind. But I
Mhm.
guess what I was asking was if you were always very good at sticking to what you told yourself you were gonna do, because I do think that there's like this kind of shamey thing that we do to ourselves sometimes when we don't. And maybe that's another issue, but I wonder if you struggled with stuff like that as well, maybe. And if the 2 minute thing, for example, the 2 minute rule was your way of like hacking your way into stop doing that.
Yeah, no, I've definitely struggled with that. I think YouTube in general, like I can't stop. Like and like it forces me to do something that I love to do, but it's also YouTube is something I can fail at. So I always procrastinate, and like before shooting especially, or before a lot of things, like when I sit down and shoot is when I can embarrass myself in front of 100,000 people. So I try to figure out ways, like my brain's trying to be like, don't do that, we've got this problem, we've got that problem, you should do this instead, maybe just go to the gym, that's a good thing to be doing. Like, oh, that is a good thing to be doing. And then Friday comes, I'm like, oh, I haven't shot a video yet, and then I have to do it. And so your brain is always trying to stop you from doing important things, at least mine is. So I've definitely struggled with that before, but I think really just like forming habits, having public accountability, um, has really helped me a lot. Like even an accountability buddy might help other people. But also kind of realizing that nobody's perfect. You see these people who are making YouTube videos about productivity, and they're learning this stuff with you. Like nobody's perfect. None of this Instagram stuff is real. None of this YouTube stuff's real. Like it's real, but it's not like you shouldn't feel bad if you're not there. Like maybe they've been working on their productivity for 10 years. Why would you be good at it already after you've seen 4 videos? Like a lot of this time takes time to kind of brainwash yourself into doing some of these things, because most people, at least me, is not like a naturally avoiding dopamine of just scrolling on your phone and instead doing something else. Like it's not something that comes naturally to most people.
Yeah, no, I love that because it's very honest and I think it's very true. And I definitely think that it just comes down, like what you're saying also is like, definitely don't compare yourself, you know, because I used to, I think prior to taking my own like photos for content on Instagram and stuff, like I used to always think like damn, these girls are always doing things and that, and it's like, actually no, they're probably not, because I know at least for myself, like whenever I'm going to shoot with a friend, I plan like 4 different outfits and then I just save those photos so that I can have like, so I can post something every week or every 2 weeks or whatever. So I think it's definitely about like being not, I mean, I don't know, not easy with yourself, but having like giving yourself grace about finding something that works for you and something that you can continuously do. And I'm like super happy that you were honest about your answer, because you're over here telling us how lazy you are, but at the same time, like you post videos every week and, right? And you like, you're like doing the thing. So there's hope for us.
Yeah. Like, but it's also like admitting that like, yes, I'm a lazy person. So what rules am I going to set up so that I can still get stuff done here? And, how can I take advantage of this? Like, I also like, taking advantage of not your greed, I guess, but like of my laziness of like, I don't want to work from 9 to 5 for the best years of my life until I'm 65. So what can I do? And that is what gave me the incentive to work like 3 jobs until I was able to leave them, and live extremely frugally and not buy anything and have an old car and like do all these different choices that I made that allowed me to live a lazy lifestyle later. It was almost like taking advantage, like just kind of taking advantage of like your different biology or how your brain works or whatever your thing is, and trying to adapt that in a way that it works for you. Like even if you are like, some people need attention, like, okay, well, I probably need attention subconsciously, which is why I do YouTube. Probably, I don't know, I need to go to therapy. But like, okay, well, if that's something you need, instead of trying to show off with cars and stuff, well, maybe you can teach people, and that'll be a way that you can, teach them guitar or piano or productivity on the internet, and that can be a way that you can get your attention. You can help people, you can make a living, like you can do all this stuff. So kind of like seeing what you actually want, and then how can you help people with that, and then in return, build a lifestyle that you actually love what you do every single day, which is kind of cool, but most people don't even try.
Yeah. I think also what you're getting at is just like being greedy with your life. It's your life, like what you just said about, I don't want to wake up at 65 and be like, oh, now I get to like relax and maybe live more lazily, or whatever it is. It's like, and I think more people are trying to do that, and I think like your videos and your content in general is really helpful to both like in what we're talking about like inspiring in the sense that, well, like if he did it, I can do it too, and also because it's accessible, like it's broken down and you can do the thing, and hopefully somebody listening to this who doesn't like their 9 to 5 and wants to find something different is getting something out of it and feeling like they can and feeling inspired by it.
Yeah, hope so.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Gabe, for coming on. It was a pleasure, and thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I had a lot of fun.
Yay. All right. Bye, guys.